Hello, my friend. Let me ask you something that might hit close to home. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling invisible? Like you were there, your mouth was moving, words were coming out, but somehow nobody really saw you? Or maybe you've watched someone else walk into a room and within seconds, every head turns their way. Not because they're screaming for attention, not because they're performing some elaborate show, but because there's something about the way they exist in conversation that makes people lean in, listen closer, and genuinely want more. Here's what nobody tells you. That magnetic quality, it's not a genetic lottery win. It's not some mystical charisma gene that skipped you. It's a learnable skill set that transforms how people experience you. And I'm going to show you exactly how to build it. Think about this for a second. Right now, as you're reading this, there are people in your life who light up when you text them. There are others who, well, let's be honest, they're probably hoping you'll keep it short. The difference between these two groups has nothing to do with your worth as a human being. It has everything to do with specific, trainable communication patterns that either pull people toward you or quietly push them away. I'm not here to teach you manipulation tactics or turn you into some smooth-talking performer. What I'm about to share is different. This is about becoming the kind of person people crave talking to, not because you've mastered some fake persona, but because you've unlocked the authentic version of yourself that knows how to connect. Over the next chapters, we're going to dismantle and rebuild 9 core conversation abilities. Not theory, not fluff. Real, actionable patterns that shift how every interaction in your life unfolds. Miss these, and you'll keep wondering why meaningful connections feel like they're happening to everyone except you. Master them, and you'll watch relationships that once felt transactional transform into something that actually sustains you. Let's start where it all begins, with the foundation that determines whether people want to engage with you in the first place. The inner game, building unshakable presence. You know that voice in your head during conversations, the one that whispers they're judging every word you say or you're boring them right now, aren't you? That voice is a liar, and it's been sabotaging your connections for years. Here's the reality most people miss. When you're trapped in your own head, obsessing over how you're coming across, you become the most exhausting person in the room. Not to others, but to yourself. That self-monitoring loop drains your energy, kills your spontaneity, and creates exactly the awkwardness you're trying to avoid. Let me give you something that'll shift your entire experience. Most people are too wrapped up in their own performance anxiety to critically evaluate yours. There's this fascinating psychological phenomenon, let's call it the imaginary audience effect, where we massively overestimate how much others are paying attention to our flaws. Researchers ran an experiment where they had college students wear objectively embarrassing shirts into a room full of peers. The students predicted about half the room would notice and remember. The reality? Only about 20% even registered what they were wearing. That awkward thing you said 3 days ago that you're still replaying at 2 a.m.? Literally, nobody else is thinking about it. They're too busy replaying their own awkward moments. This isn't just comforting, it's liberating. Once you truly absorb this truth, something shifts. You can start conversations with strangers without that crushing weight of assumed judgment. You can share an idea in a meeting without the paralyzing fear that one wrong word will shatter your reputation. You can just exist in conversation without constantly bracing for social disaster. But knowing this intellectually and feeling it in your nervous system are two different things. So here's how we bridge that gap. Rewiring your social operating system. Your brain is remarkably plastic. The same neural machinery that created those limiting beliefs. I always freeze up in conversations, I never know what to say, can be retrained to support you instead. Start catching those absolute statements. Always and never are almost always, see what I did there? Inaccurate. Replace them with growth-oriented alternatives. I'm developing stronger conversational reflexes, or I'm discovering new ways to contribute that feel natural to me. This isn't toxic positivity. It's creating an accurate assessment of reality. You're not inherently broken at conversation. You're simply at an earlier point in developing a skill that, like any skill, improves with intentional practice. Here's what this looks like practically. Set ridiculously small social goals that gradually expand what feels comfortable. Maybe today it's making eye contact with 3 strangers at the coffee shop. Tomorrow, it's asking your colleague one question about their weekend. Next week, it's contributing one sentence in a group discussion. Each tiny victory literally rewires your brain. You're not just building confidence, you're creating new neural pathways that associate social interaction with success rather than threat. Your nervous system starts learning, oh, this isn't dangerous, this is actually fine, maybe even enjoyable. And here's the paradox that nobody prepared you for. Confidence isn't the absence of nervousness. It's not some permanent state where you never feel anxious. Even the most socially magnetic people you know feel nervous sometimes. The difference is they've learned to acknowledge that feeling without letting it hijack the entire interaction. Think of anxiety as data, not a stop sign. Your body saying, this matters to me, rather than abort mission immediately. The body-mind. Feedback loop. Here's something that sounds too simple to work, but the research is undeniable. How you hold your body directly influences how confident you feel, which influences how others perceive you, which reinforces how you feel. It's a loop, and you can enter it from any point. Try this right now. Stand up, pull your shoulders back, lift your chin slightly. Take a deep, full breath. Hold this expansive posture for just 2 minutes. Notice what shifts. Your thoughts probably became a bit less anxious. Your energy might have lifted slightly. This isn't placebo. It's biology. Adopting what researchers call high-power poses actually changes your hormonal balance. Testosterone, linked to confidence, goes up. Cortisol, linked to stress, goes down. Before you enter any conversation that matters, a networking event, a difficult discussion, even a date, take 2 minutes in private to stand tall and expansive. Your body will signal to your brain, we've got this. We're capable here. Eye contact is another powerful dial you control. Most people either avoid it entirely, which reads as discomfort or disinterest, or overdo it, which feels intense and confrontational. The sweet spot? Maintain comfortable eye contact about 60 to 70% of the time while you're speaking, slightly more while listening. This isn't about staring someone down. It's about communicating. I'm present. I'm engaged. You have my attention. Your voice carries confidence, too. Most people don't realize they're speaking from their throat, creating a thin, sometimes shaky sound. Try speaking from your diaphragm instead, that spot just below your rib cage. The sound becomes fuller, more resonant, more grounded. Slow down deliberately between thoughts. Pause with intention. This signals composure and gives weight to your words. Here's the pattern: rushed speech plus upward inflection, making statements sound like questions, plus minimal pausing equals, I'm not sure I should be taking up your time right now. Measured pace plus downward inflection on statements plus strategic pauses equals, what I'm saying matters, and I'm comfortable giving it space. The gradual exposure path. One of the most effective ways to build genuine social confidence is systematic desensitization, a fancy term for gradually exposing yourself to increasingly challenging situations until they stop triggering your threat response. Start with low-stakes interactions. The barista at your coffee shop, the person next to you in line. These are safe environments to practice brief connection without significant consequences if it doesn't go perfectly. As these become comfortable, level up to moderate challenges. Joining a conversation already in progress at a party. Expressing a mildly controversial opinion. Reaching out to someone in your industry you admire. The key is consistency and incremental progress. Each positive interaction, even if it's just not as bad as I feared, creates evidence that contradicts your anxiety. Over time, your brain's threat assessment system recalibrates. Social situations shift from the danger category to the opportunity category in your neural filing system. After each interaction, take 60 seconds to reflect, not to criticize yourself, to learn. What went well? What would you adjust next time? This transforms even awkward moments from proof that I suck at this into useful data for next time. Remember, occasional social missteps aren't just normal. They're necessary for growth. The most charismatic people you know have awkward moments. They just don't define their entire identity around those moments or let them derail their forward momentum. The confidence feedback loop. Here's where it gets interesting. As your social confidence grows, you trigger a positive feedback loop that makes each subsequent interaction easier. When you approach conversations with genuine, not fake, but genuinely developed confidence, people respond more warmly. They're more engaged, more receptive, more willing to invest in the exchange. This positive response reinforces your confidence, making the next interaction even easier. People are instinctively drawn to those who seem comfortable in their own skin. Your growing confidence creates a sense of safety for others. They feel more at ease around you, which opens the door to deeper connection. This doesn't mean pretending to be someone you're not. Authentic confidence isn't about creating a flawless social persona. It's about becoming comfortable with who you genuinely are, imperfections, quirks, and all. Paradoxically, acknowledging your humanity often makes you more approachable, not less. The most magnetic conversationalists aren't those who never stumble over words or have awkward moments. They're those who handle imperfection with grace, laugh at themselves when appropriate, and keep engaging despite momentary friction. From knowledge to practice. understanding these principles intellectually is just the starting line. Real transformation comes through consistent application in actual conversations. Here's how to implement what you've learned. Start conversations with genuine observation or compliment. Instead of generic openers, notice something specific. That's a really interesting perspective you shared earlier. Or, I noticed your reading book title. How are you finding it? Specificity signals genuine attention rather than social autopilot. Practice outward focus when nervous. When anxiety spikes, consciously redirect your attention from monitoring your own performance to genuine curiosity about the other person. What might they be thinking? What brought them here? What do they care about? This shift from self-consciousness to curiosity is one of the most powerful anxiety reduction techniques available. Remember, confidence fluctuates. Even socially skilled people have off days. On days when you feel less confident, acknowledge it without judgment and engage anyway, perhaps in smaller, more manageable ways. The goal isn't emotional perfection. It's continued action despite fluctuating feelings. View each interaction as practice, not performance. This mindset shift removes the pressure of perfection and creates space for growth. You're not being tested. You're practicing a skill that improves incrementally over time. Social confidence isn't about eliminating all nervousness or awkwardness. It's about developing the resilience to engage fully despite those feelings, knowing that with each conversation, you're strengthening your capacity for connection. The skills you're building here create the foundation for everything else we'll explore. The ability to approach interactions with calm presence amplifies every technique you'll learn. The journey to becoming magnetic in conversation begins with believing you can be, not through some sudden transformation, but through deliberate practice and willingness to step outside your familiar comfort zone. Those critical first moments, 7 seconds. That's all the time you have before someone forms a working theory about who you are. Not a complete picture. They can't possibly know you in 7 seconds. But a framework that shapes how they interpret everything you say and do afterward. This might feel unfair. How can anyone truly assess you in less time than it takes to introduce yourself? They can't, of course. But human brains don't wait for complete information. They're wired for rapid pattern recognition, a survival mechanism from our ancient past that still runs our social interactions today. The moment you appear in someone's field of awareness, their brain starts asking 2 fundamental questions, though they'd never consciously articulate it this way. Can I trust this person? Can I respect this person? These questions, what researchers call the warmth and competence assessment, happen almost instantaneously. And here's what's crucial. Warmth gets evaluated first and carries more weight than competence in social settings. People decide if they like you before they decide if they're impressed by you. And if they don't like you, your impressive credentials might never get the chance to matter. This hierarchy explains why the polished but cold professional often struggles to build genuine rapport despite obvious expertise. It's why the warm, friendly person who makes occasional mistakes is frequently welcomed back into conversation, forgiven, and sought out again. Understanding this natural human tendency gives you a clear priority. Signal warmth before showcasing competence. This doesn't mean downplaying your abilities or playing small. It simply means recognizing that your kindness and approachability create the gateway through which your competence can later be appreciated and valued. The opening advantage. Those first 7 seconds aren't just about avoiding negative impressions. They're an opportunity to establish immediate positive connection. Master this window, and you transform how people respond to you from the very first moment. The foundation is genuine warmth. A sincere smile, one that reaches your eyes and crinkles the corners, is your most powerful initial tool. Research using facial muscle measurement shows that authentic smiles trigger mirror neurons in others, creating an unconscious mimicry response. In simpler terms, your real smile activates positive feelings in the other person before either of you speaks a word. Your body language matters enormously. Standing or sitting with an open stance, shoulders relaxed but back, arms uncrossed, body angled toward the other person, signals approachability and interest. Combined with appropriate eye contact, direct but not staring, this nonverbal cluster communicates I am present and engaged with you before your conversation even begins. Then comes your greeting. A warm hello or great to meet you, delivered in a friendly, measured tone, sets a positive foundation. If you're shaking hands, make it firm but not overpowering. A brief, dry palm-to-palm connection with gentle pressure that communicates confidence without aggression. Notice how none of these elements requires special talent or extraordinary social skills. They're simple adjustments anyone can implement. Yet they dramatically influence how others perceive you in those crucial opening moments. Your appearance plays a role too, though perhaps not how you think. The goal isn't perfection or rigid adherence to style rules. Rather, your attire and grooming should demonstrate respect for the context and the other person. This means dressing appropriately for the setting, slightly more formal than required if you're uncertain, and ensuring basic presentation communicates self-respect. What's remarkable about mastering this opening window is how it creates a positive feedback loop. When you enter an interaction projecting warmth and appropriate confidence, the other person typically responds in a kind. Their positive reaction reinforces your confidence, making the entire conversation flow more naturally from the start. Opening the door. Once you've made that crucial nonverbal first impression, your opening words become the bridge to meaningful exchange. This is where many people freeze, overthinking what to say until the moment for natural connection passes. The secret to effective conversation starters isn't cleverness or originality. It's relevance and authenticity. The best openers feel natural rather than rehearsed, and they open doors rather than closing them. One powerful approach, the genuine observation or compliment. Notice something specific about the person or environment and comment on it with authentic interest. That's an unusual design on your jacket. Does it have a story? Or, this venue has such interesting architecture. Have you been here before? The key is specificity. Vague compliments feel hollow and sometimes even suspicious. Detailed observations demonstrate actual attention, which is flattering and creates an easy entry point for conversation. Environmental comments work particularly well because they create shared experience. Remarking on the lighting, the music, the weather visible through the window, these establish common ground without requiring personal disclosure from either party. Low-pressure entry, natural flow. Questions can be equally effective, provided they're open-ended and demonstrate interest rather than interrogation. What brings you to this event invites elaboration in a way that, do you come to these events often? Doesn't. The former creates space for the other person to share as much or as little as they're comfortable with. Here's what many don't realize. Your opening line matters less than what follows it. Research from behavioral scientists found that asking follow-up questions, showing genuine curiosity about the other person's response, dramatically increases likability in initial meetings. In speed dating experiments, participants who asked more follow-up questions were significantly more likely to secure a second date. This reveals something profound about human connection. People care less about how interesting you seem and more about how interested you are in them. Your curiosity about their response creates the sense that you're truly present in the conversation rather than waiting for your turn to speak. Prepare a few conversation starters that feel natural to you for different contexts. Having these ready reduces anxiety and prevents awkward silences. But remember, the goal isn't to deliver a perfect line. It's to open a door to mutual discovery. Finding common ground quickly. Once conversation has begun, establishing points of connection accelerates rapport. This doesn't mean pretending to share interests you don't have. Insincerity is easily detected and undermines trust. Instead, it means being attentive to genuine areas of overlap, however small they might initially seem. Listen carefully for mentions of locations, experiences, or interests that resonate with you. When you hear one, acknowledge it briefly. I noticed you mentioned hiking in the Rockies. I was there 2 summers ago. This creates a branching point where the conversation can either continue on its original track or explore this shared experience. What if you don't immediately find common ground? Create it through shared present experience. You're both at the same event, in the same weather, perhaps dealing with the same traffic on the way here. These immediate shared circumstances can serve as bridges until deeper connections emerge. Another approach? Notice what energizes the other person. When their voice becomes more animated or their gestures more expressive, they're revealing something they care about. Even if it's not your area of expertise, expressing genuine curiosity about their enthusiasm creates connection. The key word here is genuine. People have remarkable radar for detecting feigned interest. True curiosity, even about topics new to you, is far more connecting than pretended expertise in areas you think will impress them. Reading and adapting to their signals. Perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of creating strong first impressions is the ability to read the other person's signals and adapt accordingly. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about adjusting your communication style to create comfort and connection in those initial moments. Observe how the other person carries themselves. Are they energetic and expressive, or more reserved and measured? Do they speak quickly or deliberately? Do they stand close or maintain more personal space? These clues reveal their communication preferences and comfort zones. Someone who speaks quickly and animatedly might appreciate your matching their energy, while a more reserved individual might find that same energy overwhelming. A person who maintains greater physical distance likely values personal space and might be uncomfortable with touch beyond the initial handshake. This adaptive approach extends to conversation topics as well. Notice which questions or comments elicit engaged responses versus polite but brief acknowledgments. When you find a topic that generates genuine interest, explore it further rather than moving quickly to the next item on a mental checklist. The goal isn't to become a social chameleon without authentic presence. Rather, it's to demonstrate emotional intelligence by recognizing and respecting the other person's communication style while remaining true to yourself. Priming yourself for success. The impression you make isn't just about techniques applied in the moment. It's also about how you prepare yourself mentally before the interaction begins. Your internal state profoundly influences your external presentation. Before important meetings or social events, take a few moments for what I call positive priming. Mentally rehearse a successful interaction. Visualize yourself greeting others with confidence, engaging in flowing conversation, and creating genuine connection. This mental rehearsal creates neural pathways that your brain can follow when the actual interaction occurs. Manage pre-meeting anxiety with deliberate breathing. Taking several slow, deep breaths activates your parasympathetic nervous system, reducing stress hormones and helping you appear more relaxed and present. A simple technique: breathe in for a count of 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Combine this with positive self-talk that counters limiting beliefs. Replace thoughts like, "I always get nervous meeting new people," with, "I'm prepared to connect authentically with others." This isn't about denying natural nervousness. It's reframing it as excitement and opportunity rather than threat. These internal preparations matter because tension and anxiety leak through in subtle ways. Slightly rushed speech, rigid posture, averted gaze. These undermine the impression you want to create. By managing your internal state, you ensure your external presentation aligns with your intentions. Beyond the opening, while this section focuses on those crucial first moments, it's worth noting how a strong opening sets the stage for everything that follows. The warmth and interest you establish initially creates a foundation of goodwill that sustains the conversation through any momentary awkwardness or lulls. Having started with warmth, you can gradually demonstrate competence through your contributions to the discussion. Share relevant insights or experiences when appropriate, but continue prioritizing curiosity about the other person over showcasing your own knowledge. Remember, first impressions aren't just about the beginning of relationships. They happen whenever you're presenting a new facet of yourself. The executive meeting her team for the first time. The professional introducing a new project to stakeholders. The friend bringing their partner to meet their social circle. All these scenarios involve first impressions of different aspects of who you are. By mastering the principles in this section, you ensure that each new context begins with the same advantage. People predisposed to see you positively and engage with you openly. The lasting impact, the science of first impressions, reveals something both challenging and empowering. those initial moments carry disproportionate weight in how relationships develop. This might seem unfair. Shouldn't people reserve judgment until they know us better? But it's a reality of human psychology. We can either resist it or leverage it. By understanding the primacy of warmth over competence, the power of genuine curiosity, and the importance of adapting to other signals, you transform those critical first seconds from a potential obstacle into a consistent advantage. The most powerful first impressions don't come from elaborate techniques or carefully crafted personas. They emerge from authentic presence, genuine interest in others, and the confidence to be yourself at your best. When you approach new connections with warmth, curiosity, and attentiveness, you create openings for relationships that can grow in depth and meaning over time. Master these opening moments, and you'll find doors opening that might otherwise remain closed, not through manipulation, but through genuine human connection that begins exactly right, the silent language that speaks volumes. Here's something that'll probably surprise you. Right now, as you're sitting there reading this, your body is having an entire conversation that you're completely unaware of. The way you're positioned, the tension or lack of it in your shoulders, whether your arms are crossed or open, the micro expressions flickering across your face. All of it is broadcasting a steady stream of information to anyone watching. Information that often speaks louder than anything coming out of your mouth. And here's the kicker. When there's a mismatch between what you're saying and what your body is communicating, people almost always trust your body. Not consciously. They couldn't tell you why exactly. They just sense something's off, and that feeling shapes how they respond to you far more than your actual words do. Think about the last time someone told you they were totally fine while their jaw was clenched, their arms were crossed tight against their chest, and their foot was tapping an anxious rhythm against the floor. Did you believe their words or their body? This silent vocabulary, what we call nonverbal communication, makes up a massive portion of your communicative impact. Some researchers suggest it's as high as 93% in emotional exchanges. Whether that exact number holds up or not, the principle is undeniable. Your body is constantly testifying to your true thoughts and feelings, often without your awareness. The question is, are you testifying on your own behalf or against yourself? What your body reveals, whether you want it to or not. Imagine telling someone you're completely relaxed while your shoulders are hunched up toward your ears, your fists are clenched, and your breathing is shallow and rapid. Which message are they going to believe? This isn't conscious on their part. It's deeply wired into human neurology. Throughout our evolutionary history, we needed to quickly determine whether an approaching stranger represented danger or opportunity. We couldn't afford to be fooled by pleasant words masking hostile intent. That ancient threat detection system is still running in modern brains. When your words say, "I'm interested in what you're saying," but your body language screams boredom or dismissal, people instinctively sense the disconnect. Something feels wrong, even if they can't immediately identify what. This can work against you when your nonverbal cues undermine your message. But, and this is crucial, It can work tremendously for you when you learn to align your body language with your intentions. The first step toward mastery is awareness. Most people move through life completely oblivious to the signals they're broadcasting. They focus exclusively on their words while their body tells an entirely different story. By becoming conscious of your nonverbal communication, you gain the ability to ensure your entire being speaks with one unified voice. This doesn't mean adopting some rigid, performative posture that feels unnatural. It means developing a physical presence that authentically expresses your best self. When your nonverbal cues align with your words and intentions, you achieve powerful congruence that others experience as authenticity and trustworthiness. When they don't align, you create confusion and cognitive dissonance that makes people uncomfortable without them understanding why. The foundation, how you carry yourself, the way you hold your body, forms the baseline of your nonverbal communication. Before a single gesture or facial expression, your posture broadcasts information about your confidence, mood, and openness to connection. An upright posture, shoulders relaxed and drawn slightly back, not hunched forward or tensely raised, signals both confidence and approachability. This doesn't mean military rigidity. Think of it as being comfortably aligned, your spine supporting you without strain. When standing, distribute your weight evenly on both feet rather than shifting side to side, which communicates nervousness or impatience. When seated, lean slightly forward rather than collapsing back into your chair. This subtle inclination toward the other person signals engagement and genuine interest. Keep your arms open rather than crossed, which can be interpreted as defensive or closed off. If you're uncertain what to do with your hands, rest them loosely in your lap or on the table. Avoid fidgeting, random touches to your face or hair, constant repositioning, which distracts from your message and broadcasts anxiety. Here's what's fascinating. The power of posture extends beyond how others perceive you. It actually changes how you feel about yourself. Research demonstrates that adopting expansive, confident postures for even 2 minutes increases testosterone, associated with confidence, and decreases cortisol, associated with stress. Your body position doesn't just communicate your internal state to others. It actively shapes that state. This bidirectional relationship means you can use your body to influence your mind, not just the other way around. Movement quality matters enormously as well. Purposeful, deliberate movements convey confidence and self-possession. Fidgeting, random adjustments, constant touching of face or hair suggests nervousness and undermines your message. This doesn't mean becoming unnaturally still. Natural gestures that emphasize your points are engaging and dynamic. The key is intentionality rather than nervous habit. Ask yourself, is this movement serving my communication or is it releasing my anxiety? Consider how you enter a space. This moment sets the tone for everything that follows. Enter with your head up, making brief eye contact with people rather than studying the floor. A genuine smile, even a slight one, creates an immediate positive impression. These first seconds establish your nonverbal foundation before you've said a single word. The connection, windows, eyes, and expression. If posture forms your foundation, your eyes and facial expressions create emotional connection. These are the most expressive elements of your body language, capable of conveying subtle nuances that words alone cannot capture. Eye contact is particularly powerful. Research shows that direct gaze increases the perceived truthfulness of statements and creates a sense of connection between people. However, and this is important, there's a delicate balance. Too little eye contact can seem evasive, disinterested, or unconfident. Too much can feel intimidating, aggressive, or uncomfortable. The sweet spot? Maintain eye contact for about 60 to 70% of the time while you're speaking and 80 to 90% while you're listening. This isn't about staring unblinkingly at someone's eyeballs. It's about steady, comfortable attention with natural breaks. When speaking to groups, distribute your gaze among different people, connecting briefly with each person rather than fixating on one individual or looking over everyone's heads into the middle distance. Your facial expressions continuously broadcast your emotions and reactions. Many people underestimate how much their face reveals. They maintain what they think is a neutral expression while their eyes or mouth subtly signal boredom, skepticism, or disagreement. Developing awareness of your facial expressions allows you to ensure they support rather than contradict your message. Responsive expressions show engagement in conversation. Nodding occasionally while listening signals understanding and encouragement. Smiling at appropriate moments, not frozen in a permanent grin, but responding naturally to positive or humorous content, creates warmth and connection. Similarly, showing appropriate concern when the topic turns serious demonstrates empathy and attention. The key is congruence. Your expression should match both your words and the emotional tone of the conversation. A serious message delivered with a smile creates cognitive dissonance, as does expressing enthusiasm with a flat, unexpressive face. When your facial expression aligns with your message, the combined impact is significantly more powerful than either component alone. The subtle power of synchronization. Have you ever noticed how people in deep rapport naturally adopt similar postures and gestures? This unconscious synchronization, sometimes called the chameleon effect, is a powerful indicator of connection, and it can be consciously employed to build rapport. When we subtly mirror another person's body language, adopting a similar posture, energy level, or speaking pace, we create a nonverbal signal that says we're in sync. This mirroring happens naturally when we feel connected to someone, but it can also be intentionally cultivated to strengthen rapport. The key word is subtle. Obvious mimicry feels mocking rather than connecting. Effective mirroring involves a slight delay and partial reflection of the other person's posture or gestures. If they lean forward slightly, you might do the same after a few moments. If they speak more slowly and thoughtfully, you might adjust your pace to more closely match theirs. This technique works because humans are fundamentally tribal creatures who seek signs of belonging and similarity. When our body language subtly matches someone else's, it creates a nonverbal sense of we're alike, which fosters trust and connection. Research confirms this. In controlled studies, participants who were subtly mirrored by conversation partners rated the interaction as smoother and more pleasant, and felt more positively toward the person mirroring them, all without consciously noticing the mirroring behavior. Alongside mirroring, spatial awareness plays a crucial role. Every culture has unwritten rules about appropriate personal distance, and violating these boundaries creates immediate discomfort. In most Western contexts, social conversations typically occur at about 3 to 4 feet of distance, while closer proximity is reserved for intimate relationships. Being attuned to others' spatial preferences allows you to respect their comfort zone. Some people naturally prefer more personal space than others. If someone leans away slightly during conversation, they may be signaling a need for more distance. Conversely, leaning in slightly, without invading their space, can nonverbally communicate interest and engagement with what they're saying. Reading the silent signals, becoming fluent in body language isn't just about managing your own nonverbal communication, it's equally about reading and responding to other signals. This awareness transforms you from someone who merely speaks into someone who truly converses, adjusting dynamically to the unspoken feedback you're receiving. Watch for clusters of nonverbal cues rather than interpreting single signals in isolation. One crossed arm might simply mean someone is cold, but crossed arms combined with a turned-away posture, minimal eye contact, and tight facial muscles more reliably indicates discomfort or disagreement. Signs of engagement include forward-leaning posture, maintained eye contact, nodding, and responsive facial expressions. When someone is genuinely interested, their body naturally orients toward you and their face becomes more animated. Conversely, disengagement often manifests as increased distance, reduced eye contact, closed posture, and minimal facial responsiveness. The person might check the time, look around the room, or position their body toward an exit, all signals that their attention is elsewhere. Tension or disagreement often appears in subtle ways before becoming verbally expressed. Watch for tightening around the mouth, a fixed smile that doesn't reach the eyes, crossed arms or legs, or hands that clench slightly. Recognizing these early warning signs allows you to address concerns before they escalate, or to adjust your approach accordingly. When you notice shifts in someone's body language, adapt. If signs of discomfort emerge, you might give them more space, slow your pace, or check in with a question about their thoughts. If you see engagement and interest, you might deepen the conversation by asking more meaningful questions. This responsive awareness creates a conversational dance where both parties feel seen and respected. Rather than plowing ahead with your agenda regardless of reception, you're continuously adjusting based on the feedback, spoken and unspoken, that you receive. The voice beyond words. While we typically think of voice as separate from body language, your vocal delivery, tone, pace, volume, and inflection is actually a form of nonverbal communication produced by your physical instrument. How you say something often matters more than what you say. A confident voice has several distinguishable characteristics. It's well modulated, neither too loud nor too soft, clear in articulation, and varies appropriately in pace and tone. Speaking from your diaphragm rather than your throat creates a fuller, more resonant sound that naturally commands attention without requiring volume. Pacing significantly impacts how others receive your message. Speaking too quickly can make you seem nervous or can overwhelm listeners, making it hard for them to process what you're saying. Excessive slowness might test patience or suggest you're uncertain. The sweet spot varies by context. A complex idea might require slower delivery, while an exciting story benefits from more energetic pacing. Strategic pauses are among the most powerful vocal tools available. A well-placed pause before an important point creates anticipation. A pause after allows the idea to land with impact. Many speakers rush through their most significant points, reducing their effect. Instead, give weight to important ideas by surrounding them with brief silence. Vocal variety keeps listeners engaged. A monotone delivery, regardless of content, signals boredom and creates boredom in turn. Varying your pitch, pace, and volume creates auditory texture that maintains interest. Think of your voice as an instrument capable of expression beyond mere word delivery. Watch out for speech patterns that undermine your authority. Particularly problematic is uptalk, ending statements with a rising intonation that makes them sound like questions. This habit can make even expert knowledge sound tentative and uncertain. Similarly, excessive filler words, like, distract from your message and suggest a lack of confidence or clarity. Record yourself speaking, if possible. Most people are shocked by how many fillers they use unconsciously. Once you're aware of them, you can begin replacing them with brief pauses, which actually sound more confident anyway. Your voice and body language should work in harmony. A confident statement delivered while looking at the floor with hunched shoulders creates a confusing mixed message. When your words, voice, and body align, you achieve powerful congruence that others experience as authentic and compelling. The gift of true attention. Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone made you feel like you were the only person in the universe who mattered? Not just heard your words, but truly listened, like they wanted to understand not just what you were saying, but why it mattered to you, like they were fully present, genuinely curious, and completely invested in your perspective. If you're like most people, you can count those experiences on one hand, maybe two hands, if you're lucky. And that's exactly why mastering this next skill transforms you into the kind of person others crave talking to. Because in a world where everyone is desperate to speak, to share their opinions and experiences, the person who truly listens stands out like a beacon. Here's the counterintuitive truth. The most powerful thing you can do in conversation often isn't about what you say at all. It's about how deeply you're willing to receive what the other person is offering. This isn't about staying quiet while you wait for your turn. To talk, that's not listening. That's just not talking. Real listening is one of the most active, engaged things you can do in conversation. It requires presence, focus, and genuine curiosity. It demands that you temporarily set aside your own thoughts and experiences to fully enter someone else's world. And when you do this well, people notice, not always consciously, but they feel it. They sense that you're fully with them, not just physically present, but mentally and emotionally engaged. This complete attention is so uncommon that when people experience it, they're drawn to it instinctively. The presence paradox. The foundation of powerful listening begins with something deceptively simple, yet increasingly rare: being fully present. True presence means giving your undivided attention to the person speaking. It means temporarily setting aside your mental to-do list, silencing the internal dialogue about what you'll say next, and resisting the urge to check your phone or scan the room for more interesting prospects. This complete attention is so uncommon that when people experience it, they notice, often at a subconscious level. They sense that you're fully with them, not just physically present, but mentally and emotionally engaged as well. The paradox is that while presence requires you to temporarily forget yourself, it actually makes you more memorable to others. By focusing entirely on them, rather than managing your own impression, you create a stronger connection than any clever comment or personal anecdote could achieve. Creating this presence begins with eliminating distractions. Put your phone away, not just face down on the table, which research shows still divides your attention, but completely out of sight. Position yourself to face the speaker directly, minimizing visual distractions in your peripheral vision. Your body language should communicate attentiveness. Lean slightly forward, maintain comfortable eye contact, and orient your body toward the speaker. These nonverbal signals don't just show the person you're listening, they actually help you listen better by physically aligning your body with your intention. Mental presence requires discipline. Our minds naturally wander, especially when someone is speaking about a topic we find less engaging. When you notice your thoughts drifting to what you'll say next, or to an unrelated matter, gently bring your focus back to the speaker. Like any skill, this mental discipline improves with practice. You're training your attention like a muscle. Each time you notice wandering thoughts and redirect them, you're strengthening your capacity for sustained presence. The most challenging aspect of presence is patience. Modern life conditions us for speed and efficiency, making us uncomfortable with pauses or slower conversational rhythms. Yet, some of the most meaningful exchanges emerge when we resist rushing, allowing the other person time to gather their thoughts or explore a complex idea. This patience extends to how you respond as well. Rather than immediately jumping in with your own experience or opinion, when the speaker pauses, give their words a moment to settle. This brief space signals that you're thoughtfully considering what they've shared rather than simply waiting for your turn to talk. The difference between hearing and listening lies in this quality of presence. Hearing is passive reception of sound. Listening is active engagement with meaning. When you give someone your complete attention, you're not just hearing their words, you're entering their world, seeing through their eyes, understanding from their perspective. The encouragement effect. Once you've established presence, the next dimension of active listening involves encouraging the speaker to continue sharing. This isn't about prompting them to talk indefinitely. It's about creating a conversational environment where they feel safe and supported in expressing their thoughts fully. Verbal encouragers are small responses that signal your engagement without taking over the conversation. Simple phrases like, "I see," "go on," or "that's interesting," acknowledge that you're following along and invite the speaker to continue. These brief affirmations act as conversational lubricant, keeping the exchange flowing smoothly. Your emotional responses matter as well. Mirroring appropriate emotions, showing concern when they share, something troubling, smiling when they relate something positive, nodding in understanding when they express a challenge, demonstrates that you're not just processing their words, but connecting with the feelings behind them. This emotional attunement creates a powerful feedback loop. When the speaker sees that you're responding to the emotional content of their message, they feel understood at a deeper level. This understanding encourages them to share more openly, which in turn gives you more opportunity to demonstrate comprehension, creating a virtuous cycle of deepening connection. Equally important is what you don't do. Avoid responses that shut down sharing, checking the time, interrupting with your own story, offering premature advice, or showing signs of judgment or dismissal. Even subtle cues like raised eyebrows or a skeptical expression can cause the speaker to withdraw or edit their thoughts. Instead, maintain an open, accepting demeanor, even when you might disagree with what's being said. This doesn't mean you must agree with everything. It simply means you're creating space for their perspective to be fully expressed before offering your own. The encouragement effect works because it satisfies a fundamental human need to be heard and understood. When you encourage someone to share more deeply, you're essentially saying, "Your thoughts matter to me. I want to understand your perspective." This validation is powerfully affirming in a world where genuine attention is increasingly scarce. The mirror of understanding. Perhaps the most distinctive element of active listening is the use of reflective techniques, verbal mirrors that show the speaker you've not only heard their words, but grasped their meaning. Reflection involves periodically paraphrasing or summarizing what the speaker has shared. This isn't simply repeating their words verbatim, which can seem mechanical or patronizing. Instead, it's distilling the essence of their message in your own words. So, what I'm hearing is that you felt overlooked during the project planning, even though you had valuable input to offer. This reflection serves multiple purposes. First, it confirms your understanding, allowing the speaker to clarify if you've misinterpreted something. Second, it demonstrates that you're fully engaged with their message, processing it rather than simply waiting for your turn to speak. Third, and perhaps most powerfully, it validates their experience by showing that it's worthy of careful attention and comprehension. The psychological impact of being accurately understood is profound. When someone reflects our thoughts or feelings back to us, it creates a sense of being seen and valued. This experience activates reward centers in the brain, literally making the speaker feel good about the interaction. Reflection becomes even more powerful when combined with clarifying questions that invite deeper exploration. These aren't leading questions that push the conversation in your preferred direction, but open inquiries that help the speaker elaborate on important points. How did you feel when that happened? Or what was most challenging about that situation for you? These questions serve as conversational doorways, opening new rooms for exploration. They signal not just that you've understood what's been said so far, but that you're interested in understanding more deeply. This demonstrated curiosity is flattering. It suggests that the speaker's thoughts are worth exploring in detail. Another form of reflection is validating the speaker's feelings or experiences. Statements like, "That sounds really challenging," or "I can understand why you'd feel that way," acknowledge the emotional reality of their experience without necessarily agreeing with their conclusions. This validation creates psychological safety, making the speaker more likely to share honestly, rather than editing their thoughts to seem more rational or acceptable. The cumulative effect of these reflective techniques is powerful. The speaker feels not just heard, but understood. This understanding creates a level of connection that transcends ordinary conversation, making your interactions memorable and meaningful. The collaborative balance. Active listening doesn't mean never speaking yourself. Rather, it involves finding the right balance between listening and contributing, creating a conversational rhythm that feels natural and mutually satisfying. This balance begins with recognizing when to remain silent and when to respond. Some moments call for quiet attention, when the speaker is working through a complex thought, expressing something emotionally significant, or sharing an important narrative. Other moments invite response, when they've asked a direct question, when they seem to be seeking feedback, or when they've clearly concluded a thought. The thoughtful pause is an underutilized tool in this balancing act. When the speaker finishes a significant point, taking a brief moment before responding, signals that you're considering their words rather than simply waiting for your turn. This pause creates space for reflection on both sides and often leads to deeper, more thoughtful exchanges. When it is your turn to speak, build bridges rather than changing direction abruptly. Connect your contribution to what's been shared. What you said about the challenge of balancing competing priorities reminds me of this. Continuity shows that you've been listening and values the conversational thread they've established. The principle of reciprocity suggests that how you listen influences how others listen to you. When you demonstrate attentive, engaged listening, you establish a conversational norm that the other person is likely to follow when it's your turn to speak. This creates a virtuous cycle where both parties feel increasingly heard and understood. Remember that conversation is not a zero-sum game where one person's participation diminishes the others. The most satisfying exchanges have a natural ebb and flow, with both parties contributing and receiving in turn. Your goal is not to minimize your own participation, but to ensure that when you do speak, it enhances rather than derails the shared dialogue, from technique to authentic connection. As you develop your active listening skills, you may initially experience them as techniques to be applied, conscious efforts that require attention and practice. This is natural and necessary in the learning process. However, the goal is for these practices to eventually become integrated aspects of how you naturally engage with others. The transition from technique to authentic connection happens gradually as you internalize the mindset behind the methods. This mindset is fundamentally one of curiosity and respect, a genuine interest in understanding others' perspectives, and a belief that their thoughts and feelings are worthy of attention. With practice, you'll find that active listening becomes less about following specific steps and more about being fully present with another human being. The techniques become tools that support this presence rather than rules to follow mechanically. This authentic integration is what transforms active listening from a communication skill into a conversational gift. People don't respond to techniques, they respond to genuine attention and understanding. When your listening comes from a place of sincere interest rather than calculated practice, it creates connections that transcend ordinary interaction. Remember that active listening isn't about being perfect. There will be times when your mind wanders, when you interrupt too quickly, or when you miss important cues. What matters is your commitment to continuously refining your ability to truly hear others. As you implement these practices, you'll notice subtle but significant changes in your conversations. People will share more openly with you. They'll seek your company when they need to process important thoughts or feelings. They'll leave interactions with you feeling understood and valued in ways they may struggle to articulate but deeply appreciate. You'll also find that active listening enhances your own experience of conversation. Rather than the exhausting effort of constantly formulating your next comment or story, you'll discover the pleasure of being fully immersed in the exchange, present to both the other person and your own responses. The most powerful testament to your listening skill won't be anything anyone says about you. It will be their desire to talk with you again. When people consistently seek you out for conversation, when they leave interactions feeling better than when they arrived, when they tell you things they don't usually share with others, you'll know that your listening has become truly active and engaging. In a world where attention is increasingly fragmented and genuine connection increasingly rare, the ability to truly listen is nothing short of revolutionary. It transforms ordinary exchanges into meaningful connections. It creates space for understanding across differences. And it satisfies a fundamental human need to be heard and valued. The invisible bridge between minds. Here's a question that might make you uncomfortable. When was the last time you truly felt what another person was feeling? Not just intellectually understood their situation, not just nodded sympathetically while they talked, but actually felt their experience in your own body, their frustration, their joy, their fear, their excitement, as if it were happening to you. If you're struggling to remember a specific moment, you're not alone. Most people spend their entire lives living inside their own heads, occasionally glancing out at others, but never truly stepping into someone else's emotional reality. And that's exactly why this next skill, this capacity to bridge the gap between separate human experiences, is so devastatingly powerful when you develop it. Because when you can genuinely feel with another person, when you can temporarily inhabit their perspective and emotional world, something remarkable happens. They feel truly seen. Not just heard, not just acknowledged, but recognized at a level so deep that it creates bonds that can last a lifetime. This isn't some soft, fuzzy concept. This is a concrete, developable skill that transforms how others experience you. And the crazy thing? Your brain is already wired for it. You just need to know how to activate and refine what's already there. The neural foundation. Your brain contains specialized cells, let's call them resonance neurons, that fire both when you perform an action and when you watch someone else perform that same action. This neural mirroring system extends to emotions as well. When you see someone experiencing joy, disgust, or pain, Your brain activates many of the same regions that would fire if you were experiencing those emotions yourself. This isn't metaphorical, it's literal. Your brain is simulating their experience, giving you a window into their emotional state. This is why you wince when you see someone stub their toe, even though you're not in pain. Why you might feel a flutter of anxiety when a friend describes their nervousness. Why you find yourself smiling when witnessing someone else's genuine delight. Your brain is running a simulation, asking, what would this feel like if it were happening to me? This automatic mirroring creates the foundation for deeper understanding, but it's just the starting point. The true power comes when you consciously develop and refine this natural capacity, turning an instinctive response into a deliberate practice of understanding. This is what separates people who merely notice others' emotions from those who create profound emotional connections. The art of perspective taking. At the core of this connective ability is perspective taking, the conscious effort to view a situation from another person's vantage point. This goes beyond simply acknowledging that others have different opinions. It involves actively imagining how their unique circumstances, history, values, and current emotional state shape their experience. Effective perspective taking begins with curiosity rather than assumption. Don't assume you understand someone's experience. Approach with genuine interest in their unique viewpoint. What factors might be influencing how they see this situation? What past experiences might be coloring their current reaction? What values or concerns might be at stake for them? Let me give you an example. Someone seems disproportionately upset about a minor schedule change. Your first instinct might be to think, wow, that's an overreaction. But perspective taking invites you to wonder, maybe they've recently experienced multiple disruptions that have left them feeling unstable. Perhaps they have an unmentioned commitment that the change affects. Possibly they value predictability because past experiences where unexpected changes led to negative outcomes. You don't have to be a mind reader. You simply need to temporarily suspend your own interpretations to make space for theirs. This mental flexibility, the ability to hold your view and theirs simultaneously, is what allows for genuine understanding. The practice becomes more powerful when combined with careful observation. People continuously broadcast their emotional states through nonverbal cues, facial expressions, body language, tone of voice, even breathing patterns. Learning to read these signals provides crucial information about what someone is feeling, often beyond what their words express. Notice the subtle tightening around someone's eyes when discussing a supposedly not important matter. Register the slight pitch change when they mention a totally fine situation. These nonverbal leaks often reveal emotions that words alone might conceal. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of perspective taking is temporarily suspending your own biases and reactions. When someone expresses a view that contradicts yours or describes a situation differently than you experienced it, the natural tendency is to mentally argue or dismiss their perception. True perspective taking requires holding your reactions in abeyance, not permanently, but long enough to fully grasp their viewpoint. This doesn't mean abandoning your own perspective or agreeing with views you find incorrect. It simply means creating space to understand before responding. This temporary suspension of judgment allows you to see more clearly what might be true or valid in their experience, even if it differs from yours. And here's what's fascinating. When people feel you're making a sincere effort to understand their viewpoint, not just waiting to insert your own, they become more open, more trusting, and more willing to consider your perspective in turn. The power of validation. Understanding another's perspective is powerful, but expressing that understanding creates the true connection. This expression comes through validation, acknowledging the legitimacy of someone's feelings and experience. Validation doesn't mean agreeing with someone's conclusions or actions. It means recognizing that their feelings make sense given their perspective and circumstances. It's saying, in essence, I can see how you would feel that way given your experience. This simple acknowledgement is surprisingly powerful. When someone's feelings are validated, they experience a sense of relief and recognition. Their emotional intensity often decreases, not because you've solved their problem, but because you've eliminated the additional burden of feeling misunderstood or alone in their experience. Validation can be expressed in straightforward ways. Given everything you've been dealing with, it makes complete sense that you'd feel overwhelmed right now. Or, I can understand why that comment felt dismissive to you, especially after you put so much work into the project. These statements don't judge whether the person should feel a certain way. They simply acknowledge that their feelings are a natural response to their situation as they perceive it. Another form of validation is normalizing, helping someone see that their reactions are common human responses, rather than personal failings or overreactions. Many people would feel anxious in that situation, or that's a natural response to such unexpected news, reduces the isolation that often accompanies difficult emotions. What makes validation particularly powerful is that it can be offered even when you disagree with someone's conclusions or choices. You can say, I understand why you felt that decision was unfair given your perspective on the situation, while still holding a different view yourself. This creates space for disagreement without dismissing the validity of their emotional experience. It says, I see you and your feelings make sense to me, without requiring that you abandon your own viewpoint. When people feel their emotions are validated, they become more receptive to different perspectives and more open to problem solving. The defensive posture that often accompanies feeling misunderstood relaxes, creating space for more productive dialogue. The vulnerable exchange, empathic connection, deepens through appropriate sharing of your own experiences. When someone has expressed vulnerability, sharing difficult feelings or challenging situations, judicious self-disclosure can strengthen the bond between you. The key word is judicious. Sharing your own similar experiences can communicate you're not alone and demonstrate genuine understanding. However, this sharing should be carefully calibrated to support their experience rather than shifting focus to yourself. Effective empathic sharing follows a simple principle: return to their experience. You might briefly mention a time you felt similarly, but then redirect attention to their situation. I felt that kind of disappointment too when I was overlooked for a role I really wanted. How are you handling it? This balanced exchange creates mutual understanding without hijacking their moment. It offers connection without competition, showing that while you can relate, you recognize the uniqueness of their experience. Vulnerability in conversation isn't just about sharing difficult emotions. It also involves being honest about the limits of your understanding. Sometimes, the most empathic response is acknowledging that you can't fully grasp someone's experience. I can't imagine exactly how that feels, but I want to understand better. Could you tell me more about what this is like for you? This humble approach invites deeper sharing and demonstrates that your priority is genuine understanding, not performing empathy or appearing knowledgeable. Another dimension of empathic exchange is offering support when appropriate. This might be as simple as asking, "How can I help?" or as specific as offering practical assistance related to what they've shared. The key is ensuring your offer aligns with their needs rather than imposing your solution. Perhaps the most profound form of empathic exchange is compassionate listening, hearing not just the content of what's said, but the emotions underlying it, and responding with kindness. This means setting aside the urge to fix, advise, or redirect. Instead, creating space for the full expression of their experience. This compassionate presence is often what people need most, not solutions or even insights, but the sense that another human being is fully with them in their experience, neither judging nor trying to change it, but simply understanding. The cultural and individual landscape empathy becomes more nuanced when we recognize that emotional expression varies widely across cultures and individuals. What constitutes a significant emotional display in one culture might be considered minor in another. Similarly, individuals have unique patterns of expressing and processing emotions based on their personal history and temperament. Cultural awareness enhances empathic understanding. In some cultures, emotional restraint is highly valued, meaning that what appears as mild concern might represent significant distress. In others, expressive communication is the norm, and emotional displays that might seem intense to outsiders are considered appropriate and expected. These variations don't mean empathy across cultural differences is impossible. Quite the opposite. They simply highlight the importance of calibrating your interpretations to the cultural context and avoiding assumptions based solely on your own cultural norms. Individual differences are equally important. Some people naturally express emotions more visibly than others. Some process feelings internally before sharing, while others process through expression. Some communicate emotional needs directly, while others indicate them indirectly. Over time, you can learn each person's emotional language, their unique patterns of expression, and what different reactions typically signify for them. This personalized understanding allows you to respond more accurately to their specific needs and communication style. Ongoing empathic connection involves checking in rather than assuming continued understanding. Simple questions like, "How are you feeling about this now?" or "Has anything shifted for you since we last talked about this?" demonstrate continued interest in their experience and acknowledge that emotions evolve over time. This attentiveness to cultural and individual differences transforms empathy from a general capacity into a personalized connection. It shows that You're not applying a one-size-fits-all approach to understanding, but are genuinely interested in their unique experience. The ancient art that captivates. Let me tell you about a moment that changed everything for me. I was at a gathering, one of those events where everyone's making small talk, exchanging pleasantries, doing the social dance we've all perfected. Then someone started telling a story. Nothing elaborate, just something that happened to them that week. But the way they told it, the specific details, the rising tension, the unexpected turn, the way they paused right before the reveal, suddenly every person in that circle was completely transfixed. Phones forgotten, side conversations abandoned, just fully present. When they finished, there was this moment of collective breath, like we'd all been holding it together. And I realized that person had just done something magical. They'd transported a group of distracted, busy-minded people into a completely different reality for 3 minutes. No screens, no special effects, just words, arranged in a particular way. That's when I understood storytelling isn't just a nice skill to have. It's the most fundamental way humans connect, process information, and make sense of the world. And here's what nobody tells you. You already know how to do this. You're wired for it. Every time you recount your day, explain why you're upset, or share why something matters to you, you're using narrative structure. You just might not be using it well. The brain's native language. Your brain is a story processing machine. From earliest childhood, you've been making sense of the world through narrative, organizing random events into meaningful sequences with causes, effects, and emotional significance. This isn't just a preference. It's how your neural architecture operates. Your brain is literally wired to prioritize, process, and remember information presented in narrative form far more efficiently than abstract data or disconnected facts. Let me show you what I mean. Try to remember these findings. 78% of a studied group experienced increased stress. 23% reported significant health impacts. 54% considered major life changes as a result. Now imagine instead hearing about Marcus, who started getting tension headaches and insomnia after his company merger, eventually leading him to reconsider his entire career path. A week from now, which will you remember more clearly? The research is definitive. You're 22 times more likely to remember information embedded in a narrative than information presented as isolated facts. This cognitive preference isn't a quirk. It's a sophisticated evolutionary adaptation. Stories package information in a form that's not only easier to remember, but also easier to understand and relate to. They provide context, causality, and emotional relevance that raw data simply cannot convey. When you tell a well-crafted story in conversation, you're not just entertaining. You're communicating in the brain's native language. You're activating neural pathways that make your message more engaging, more comprehensible, and more memorable. This explains why, throughout human history, from ancient oral traditions to modern digital media, storytelling has remained our primary vehicle for passing down important knowledge, sharing values, and creating shared identity. It's not just a cultural practice, it's a biological imperative. The transportation effect. What happens in your brain when you hear a compelling story? something remarkable. You're mentally transported into the narrative world. This phenomenon, what psychologists call narrative transportation, is a distinct mental state where your attention, emotions, and even sensory experience become immersed in the story being told. Your brain, in essence, simulates the experience being described. When someone tells you about standing at a cliff's edge overlooking the ocean, your visual cortex activates. When they describe the sound of thunder rumbling, your auditory processing regions engage. When they share the feeling of nervousness before a crucial conversation, your emotional centers respond accordingly. This neural simulation creates an experience that approaches the richness of actually being there. It's why a well-told story about a tense situation can make your heart race, why a humorous anecdote triggers genuine laughter, why a poignant narrative can bring tears to your eyes. This transportation effect explains why stories create stronger connections between people than factual exchanges alone. When you tell a story that transports your listener, you're not just sharing information, you're creating a shared experience. Your listener isn't merely understanding your words, they're feeling what you felt, seeing what you saw, experiencing a version of what you experienced. This shared simulation creates a powerful bond. It's the difference between telling someone, "I was nervous before my presentation," and describing how your hands trembled as you reviewed your notes in the hallway, the sound of your heartbeat seemingly audible in your ears as the minutes ticked down. The transportation effect doesn't require elaborate or dramatic tales. Even simple anecdotes, when told with sensory detail and emotional honesty, can create this immersive experience. The key is not the story's inherent drama, but how vividly and authentically you convey it. The architecture of engagement. Every compelling story, from ancient myths to modern anecdotes shared over coffee, follows certain structural patterns that engage the human mind. Understanding these patterns allows you to craft narratives that naturally capture and maintain attention. The most basic narrative structure involves three elements: setup, tension, and resolution. This pattern is so fundamental to human cognition that it appears across cultures and throughout history. Our brains are primed to pay attention when this sequence begins to unfold. Setup establishes the context, the who, where, and when of your story. It orients your listener and creates the foundation for what follows. Even in brief conversational stories, a few words of context help your listener mentally enter the scene. Last Tuesday at the client meeting, or when I was grabbing coffee this morning, tension introduces uncertainty, challenge, or surprise. This element is crucial because the human brain is wired to pay attention to potential problems or unexpected developments. Tension creates questions in the listener's mind. What will happen? How will this be resolved? These questions generate the cognitive engagement that keeps someone invested in your story. This doesn't mean every anecdote needs dramatic confrontation. The tension might be as simple as a surprising observation, a moment of confusion, or a small obstacle encountered. Resolution provides the satisfaction of that tension being addressed, often delivering the point or insight of your story. This is where meaning emerges from the narrative, the lesson learned, the surprise revealed, or the emotion fully expressed, Beyond this basic structure, compelling stories often incorporate additional elements that enhance engagement. A strong opening that immediately captures attention. I never thought I'd find myself arguing with a stranger about philosophy at 2 a.m. in a diner. Or, the moment the email arrived, I knew everything was about to change. Specific, vivid detail that creates sensory engagement. Not just, it was cold, but the kind of cold that makes your lungs ache with each breath. Strategic pacing that builds anticipation, slowing down at crucial moments, using pauses before key revelations, and varying the rhythm to maintain interest. Authentic emotion that invites empathetic connection. Sharing how you felt during the experience makes it relatable and human. These elements aren't formulaic constraints, but rather tools that align with how the human mind naturally processes narrative. By incorporating them thoughtfully, you create stories that feel both satisfying and engaging to your listeners. The sensory canvas. The difference between a forgettable anecdote and a story that transports your listener often comes down to one element: sensory detail. These specific, vivid descriptions activate the listener's sensory cortices, creating a rich mental simulation of the experience you're sharing. Consider the difference between "I went to the mountains and saw a beautiful view," and "I reached the summit just as dawn broke. The valley below painted in shades of amber and violet, the air so still I could hear my own breathing." The second description doesn't just tell the listener about the experience, it recreates it, inviting them to see, hear, and feel aspects of the moment you're describing. This sensory engagement is powerful because it bypasses abstract processing and creates direct experience. Rather than conceptualizing your story, your listener partially lives it through their own sensory imagination. You don't need elaborate descriptions to achieve this effect. Even in casual conversation, a few well-chosen sensory details can transform a basic recounting into an immersive narrative. The sharp scent of disinfectant in a hospital waiting room. The particular quality of light through office blinds during a crucial meeting. The unexpected softness of an object that looked rigid. Emotional details are equally important for creating engagement. Sharing how you felt during an experience, your hopes, fears, confusion, or joy, invites your listener to connect with the human dimension of your story. This emotional transparency creates resonance, especially when you express feelings that others can relate to from their own experiences. Humor and surprise function as powerful engagement tools as well. An unexpected twist or a moment of levity within your narrative creates both emotional response and cognitive engagement. The surprise of something unanticipated activates attention, while humor creates positive emotional association with both the story and you as the storyteller. By painting on this sensory and emotional canvas, you transform abstract information into concrete experience. Your words become not just symbols to be processed, but gateways to simulation and feeling. The interactive nature, conversational storytelling, differs from formal storytelling in one crucial aspect. It's inherently interactive. Rather than delivering a polished monologue to a passive audience, you're creating a shared experience with active participants. This interactive quality requires awareness and responsiveness. As you tell your story, continuously observe your listeners' reactions, their facial expressions, body language, verbal responses, and level of engagement. These cues provide valuable feedback that allows you to adjust your narrative in real time. If you notice confusion, you might briefly clarify a point before continuing. If you see particular interest or delight in response to an element of your story, you might expand on that aspect. If attention seems to wane, you might accelerate toward your conclusion or add an engaging detail to recapture interest. Beyond simply observing, you can actively invite participation through rhetorical questions or direct engagement. Have you ever experienced something like that? Or can you imagine what happened next? These invitations transform your listener from audience to participant, increasing their investment in the narrative. Connecting your story to your listener's experiences creates another powerful form of engagement. When you can authentically link your narrative to something they've shared or experienced. That reminds me of what you were saying about your project last week. You create relevance that deepens the connection between your story and their life. This interactive approach prevents storytelling from becoming self-centered or performative. Instead, it becomes a bridge between experiences, yours and your listeners, creating mutual understanding and shared meaning. The most skilled conversational storytellers maintain this balance naturally. They're neither dominating the exchange with one-sided narratives nor holding back from sharing meaningful experiences. Instead, they weave stories into the conversational flow in ways that enhance connection rather than showcasing themselves. The purposeful tale. Every story you tell in conversation should have a clear purpose, a reason it's worth sharing at this particular moment with this particular person. This purpose might be to illustrate a point, share an insight, express an emotion, create connection through humor, or simply entertain in a way that strengthens your relationship. Without purpose, stories can feel random or self-indulgent. With clear purpose, even simple anecdotes become meaningful contributions to the conversation. The purpose of your story should influence how you craft and deliver it. If you're sharing a narrative to illustrate a point in discussion, you'll emphasize different elements than if you're telling the same story primarily to entertain. The core events might be identical, but the framing, details you highlight, and conclusion you draw would shift to serve your current conversational purpose. Often, the most effective approach is to make your purpose clear, either before or after sharing your story. A simple framing statement like, "This reminds me of something that happened last year that really changed my perspective on this issue," or a concluding observation that ties your narrative back to the conversation topic, helps your listener understand why this story matters in this moment. This purposeful approach ensures your stories feel relevant rather than tangential to the conversation. It transforms storytelling from a potential interruption into a valuable contribution that moves the discussion forward or deepens the connection between you and your listener. Authenticity remains essential to purposeful storytelling. The stories that resonate most powerfully are those that genuinely reflect your experiences and values. While you might emphasize different aspects of an experience depending on the conversational context, manufacturing stories or exaggerating significantly for effect, ultimately undermines trust and connection. The most effective conversational stories reveal something genuine about you, your perspective, values, humor, or humanity. This self-revelation, offered appropriately and in service of the conversation rather than your ego, creates the foundation for authentic connection. The chemistry of connection. Picture this. You're in a room full of people, and the atmosphere feels heavy. Everyone's being polite, professional, going through the motions. Then someone makes a comment. Nothing elaborate, just a well-timed observation. And suddenly the entire room erupts in laughter. That tension you didn't even realize you were carrying? Gone. Those walls people had up? Lowered. That awkward distance between strangers? Dissolved. In 3 seconds, everything shifted. This isn't magic. This is the power of one of the most underestimated tools in human connection. And here's what's fascinating. When people laugh together, something remarkable happens in their brains. The act triggers the release of endorphins, neurochemicals that create feelings of pleasure and well-being. This isn't just a pleasant side effect. It's a powerful bonding mechanism that nature built into our neurology. Brain imaging studies show that shared laughter activates reward circuits and regions controlling arousal and positive emotion. Researchers note that this neurochemical response likely supports the formation, reinforcement, and maintenance of social bonds. In simpler terms, laughing with someone creates a biochemical connection. You're not just enjoying a moment together. You're literally forming a neurological bond. This chemical connection helps explain why we're drawn to people who make us laugh. It's not just that they're entertaining. They're triggering positive neurological responses that make us feel good when we're around them. Our brains associate these good feelings with the person who caused them, creating a positive feedback loop that makes us want more interaction. The bonding power of shared amusement extends beyond momentary pleasure. Evolutionary psychologists suggest that laughter developed as a social signal long before language existed. It's a universal human expression that communicates safety, play, and social cohesion. When we laugh together, we're engaging in a primal form of connection that transcends cultural and linguistic barriers. This evolutionary perspective explains why humor is found in every human society, despite vast differences in what specific content is considered amusing. Understanding this biological and evolutionary foundation reveals why incorporating this element into your conversations isn't just about being entertaining. It's about activating one of the most fundamental mechanisms of human connection. When you make someone laugh, you're not just amusing them. You're creating a neurochemical experience that draws them to you at a level beyond conscious thought. The tension release valve. Beyond its bonding function, humor serves another crucial purpose in conversation. It provides a safe release for tension and discomfort. This relief function makes it an invaluable tool for navigating potentially awkward or stressful interactions. Consider how a well-timed light remark can break the ice in a group of strangers, diffuse tension after a disagreement, or ease anxiety during a challenging discussion. The physiological act of laughing actually reduces stress hormones like cortisol while increasing endorphins, creating a physical as well as emotional release. This tension-relieving quality makes humor particularly valuable during difficult conversations. A gentle, appropriate moment of levity after a serious topic can provide emotional breathing room without dismissing the importance of what was discussed. It signals resilience, the ability to acknowledge challenges while maintaining perspective. Self-deprecating humor serves a special function in this regard. By lightly poking fun at your own foibles or mistakes, you demonstrate both self-awareness and emotional security. This puts others at ease by showing that you don't take yourself too seriously and can acknowledge your own humanity. It also implicitly gives others permission to be imperfect themselves, creating a more relaxed and authentic conversational environment. The key to effective tension release is calibration, using humor that's appropriate to the situation and sensitive to the emotional state of others. A light touch is usually best, offering a momentary smile rather than expecting uproarious laughter during sensitive moments. When used thoughtfully, this tension-releasing function of humor transforms potentially uncomfortable interactions into manageable, even enjoyable ones. It doesn't erase difficulties, but it creates emotional space around them, allowing people to engage with challenging topics without becoming overwhelmed. The balance principle. What actually makes something funny? Why do certain remarks or observations trigger laughter while others, even seemingly similar ones, fall flat? Understanding the psychology behind humor can help you create moments of amusement more consistently and naturally. One of the most compelling explanations is what researchers call the incongruity resolution theory. Humor occurs when something simultaneously violates our expectations or norms, creating surprise or incongruity while remaining fundamentally harmless or benign, ensuring we feel safe enough to be amused rather than threatened. This balance explains why timing and context matter so much in humor. A remark that's hilarious in one setting might be offensive or confusing in another, not because the content changed, but because the context shifted, whether the violation feels benign or genuinely concerning. In conversation, this principle manifests in several ways. Observational humor often points out unexpected contradictions or absurdities in everyday situations, violations of how things should be, but in ways that don't threaten our sense of safety. Wordplay creates linguistic violations, unexpected connections between different meanings that surprise without threatening. Self-deprecating humor violates social norms of self-presentation, but in ways that signal security rather than genuine self-criticism. Understanding this principle helps you develop a more intuitive sense of what might create amusement in different situations. You begin to notice potential benign violations in everyday interactions, the slight incongruities, the unexpected connections, the gentle absurdities that might bring a smile when highlighted in the right way. This doesn't mean analyzing every potential joke to death. Rather, it means developing awareness of the patterns that create humor naturally, so you can recognize and highlight them when they occur. With practice, this awareness becomes second nature, allowing you to find the humor in situations more readily and share it more effectively. The art of playful exchange. Playful banter, the back-and-forth exchange of humorous remarks, creates some of the most enjoyable and connecting conversational moments. This collaborative play signals mutual engagement and creates a shared experience of creativity and fun. Developing this skill begins with attentiveness, noticing opportunities for playful comments or observations within the natural flow of conversation. These might include gentle wordplay, pointing out amusing ironies, or making unexpected connections between topics. The goal isn't to force humor, but to highlight the naturally amusing elements that exist in most interactions. The improv principle of yes and provides a powerful framework for collaborative humor. When someone makes a humorous remark, instead of simply laughing and moving on, you build on it with your own addition. This creates a positive spiral where each contribution enhances the previous one, often leading to moments of shared creativity and escalating amusement. For example, if someone jokingly says, "This conference room is so cold, I should have brought a parka," a yes and response might be, "and some hot cocoa." We could market this as an Arctic expedition experience. This builds on their observation while adding a new element that extends the playful scenario. Developing quick wit is like strengthening any muscle. It improves with consistent practice. You can enhance this skill by challenging yourself to find multiple humorous angles on everyday situations, playing word association games, or simply paying closer attention to what makes you and others laugh in natural conversation. An important distinction in playful banter is the difference between teasing and taunting. Friendly teasing focuses on behaviors or situations, not core attributes, and is delivered with obvious affection. The recipient should feel included in the joke, not targeted by it. The simple test: are they laughing too? If not, you've likely crossed the line and should adjust accordingly. The most enjoyable banter has a quality of generosity. It's not about showcasing your own cleverness, but about creating a shared experience of amusement. When done well, it feels like playing catch. Each person contributing to a collaborative creation rather than competing for attention or laughs. The timing and taste equation. Even the most potentially amusing observation can fall flat, or worse, cause discomfort, if delivered with poor timing or without awareness of the social context. Mastering the when and how of humor is as important as the what. Reading the room is the foundational skill here. This means being attuned to the emotional atmosphere, the cultural context, and the individual sensitivities present. A comment that would be hilarious among close friends might be inappropriate in a more formal setting or with people you don't know well. Similarly, humor that works perfectly in one cultural context might not translate to another. Certain moments call for seriousness rather than levity. During expressions of grief, serious conflict, or when someone is sharing something deeply personal, attempts at humor usually feel jarring and insensitive. Recognizing these boundaries shows emotional intelligence and respect for others' experiences. Delivery significantly impacts how humor is received. A slight pause before the punchline creates anticipation. Facial expressions that signal playfulness, a slight smile or raised eyebrow, cue others that your comment is meant to be taken lightly. Confident delivery, without undermining your own joke through hesitation or immediate backtracking, helps others feel comfortable laughing. Cultural and individual sensitivity requires ongoing awareness and adaptation. What one person finds amusing, another might find confusing or offensive. This doesn't mean walking on eggshells, but it does mean being observant of responses and willing to adjust your approach based on the feedback you receive, both verbal and nonverbal. When humor doesn't land as intended, graceful recovery is key. A simple acknowledgement, "Well, that sounded funnier in my head," followed by moving on prevents awkwardness from lingering. The willingness to occasionally miss the mark without becoming self-conscious is part of developing natural, authentic humor in conversation. The most skilled practitioners of conversational humor have developed an intuitive sense of this timing and taste equation. They seem to know instinctively when a light remark would enhance connection and when it would detract from it. This intuition isn't magical. It's the result of attentive observation and responsive adaptation over time. The authentic approach. Perhaps the most important principle of conversational humor is authenticity. Forced or performative attempts at being funny usually fall flat and can create discomfort rather than connection. True engagement comes from sharing what genuinely amuses you while remaining attuned to how it's received. This authentic approach begins with self-awareness. What naturally makes you smile or laugh? Do you notice wordplay, absurd situations, ironic contrasts, or something else entirely? Your natural sense of humor is unique to you and will resonate most authentically when expressed in your own way rather than mimicking someone else's style. Developing this authentic approach doesn't mean you can't learn and grow. By paying attention to what creates positive responses in different contexts, you can refine your natural tendencies while remaining true to your own sensibilities. The goal isn't to become someone you're not, but to become more skillful at expressing who you already are. For those who don't consider themselves naturally funny, this authentic approach offers reassurance. You don't need to transform into a comedian or master of witty repartee. Simply sharing what genuinely amuses you, with appropriate timing and sensitivity to context, creates moments of connection that are far more valuable than performative humor that doesn't reflect your true self. Remember that receptivity to others' humor is as connecting as generating it yourself. Responding with genuine appreciation to what others find amusing, even if it's not what would typically make you laugh, creates bonds just as effectively as making others laugh. The shared experience of amusement, not who initiated it, creates the connection. This authentic approach allows humor to emerge naturally from your conversations rather than being forced into them. It becomes an integrated aspect of how you relate to others rather than a technique you apply. This integration is what makes humor feel genuine and connecting rather than performative or manipulative. Navigating the challenging terrain. Here's a truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The conversations you're most afraid of having are often the exact ones that would transform your relationships. Think about it. How many times have you felt frustrated with someone but said nothing? How many misunderstandings have you let fester because addressing them felt too uncomfortable? How many relationships have slowly deteriorated because neither person was willing to bring up the difficult thing? Most people view challenging conversations as landmines to be avoided, potential disasters where one wrong word could damage a relationship or create uncomfortable emotions. So they dodge, deflect, and stay silent, watching small issues grow into relationship-ending resentments. But here's what the most magnetic communicators understand. Difficult conversations aren't obstacles to meaningful connection. They're gateways to it. When handled skillfully, these challenging moments often create deeper trust and stronger connections than any amount of pleasant small talk ever could. Because when someone demonstrates they can discuss difficult topics with you constructively, you learn something invaluable. Here's someone I can count on when things aren't perfect. That's a far more valuable quality than being pleasant when everything is easy. The hidden opportunity. Consider what happens when someone addresses a sensitive issue with you in a way that feels respectful, thoughtful, and genuinely concerned with your perspective. Rather than feeling attacked, you likely feel valued. This person cared enough to engage with a difficult topic, rather than simply avoiding you or complaining to others. They trusted the relationship enough to believe it could withstand honest communication. This dynamic explains why the ability to navigate difficult conversations often separates casual acquaintances from true confidants. When someone demonstrates they can discuss challenging topics with you constructively, you discover there's someone you can be real with, not just someone who's nice when everything's going smoothly. The opportunity extends beyond relationship building. Difficult conversations are often the only path to resolving underlying issues that, left unaddressed, tend to grow rather than disappear. The temporary discomfort of a challenging discussion frequently prevents the much greater discomfort of ongoing unresolved problems. Perhaps most importantly, difficult conversations often contain the seeds of innovation and growth. When different perspectives clash in a productive way, the result can be new insights and solutions that neither party could have reached alone. This creative potential is entirely lost when challenging topics are avoided. Understanding these hidden opportunities doesn't make difficult conversations easy, but it does transform how you approach them. Rather than seeing them as hazards to navigate around, you begin to recognize them as valuable, if challenging territory, worth exploring with the right tools and mindset. Setting the foundation. The trajectory of a difficult conversation is often determined in its first few moments. How you begin, the setting you choose, the words you use, the tone you establish, creates a foundation that shapes everything that follows. The setting itself matters more than many realize. Privacy provides safety for vulnerable expression, while public settings can create embarrassment that triggers defensiveness. Timing is equally important. Initiating a difficult conversation when someone is already stressed, tired, or rushing between commitments virtually guarantees poor results. Instead, choose a moment when both parties have the emotional and mental bandwidth to engage thoughtfully. A respectful beginning involves what relationship researchers call a soft startup, opening the conversation in a way that signals good intentions and respect rather than attack or blame. This might include a genuine expression of appreciation or common purpose. I value our working relationship, which is why I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind. An acknowledgement of your own contribution or perspective. I realize I might not have the full picture, but I wanted to share what I've been experiencing. A request for collaboration rather than a demand. I'm hoping we can find a way forward that works for both of us. These openings create psychological safety. They signal that this conversation is not an attack, but an attempt to understand and resolve an issue together. This safety is crucial because when people feel threatened, their capacity for rational thought and empathetic understanding diminishes significantly as their brain shifts into defensive mode. Your tone of voice and body language are powerful components of this initial framing. A calm, measured tone communicates respect and emotional regulation even when discussing sensitive topics. Open body language, uncrossed arms, appropriate eye contact, a relaxed posture, signals that you're approaching the conversation as a collaborative discussion rather than a confrontation. This respectful foundation doesn't guarantee a smooth conversation, but it dramatically increases the likelihood of productive engagement. It creates an environment where both parties can bring their best selves to a challenging situation rather than their most reactive, defensive versions. The language of non-defensiveness. The words you choose in difficult conversations can either open doors to understanding or slam them shut. Perhaps no linguistic choice has more impact than the difference between you statements and I statements when expressing concerns or negative emotions. Consider the difference between "you always interrupt me in meetings, you're so inconsiderate," and "I felt frustrated during yesterday's meeting when I was interrupted while sharing my proposal. I value having the chance to fully express my ideas." The first approach almost invariably triggers defensiveness. It makes a global character assessment. You're inconsiderate, based on a specific behavior, and uses absolutist language always. That's easy to dispute. The recipient's natural response is to defend themselves rather than consider the underlying concern. The second approach, using what psychologists call I language, keeps the focus on your own experience rather than making accusations about the other person's character or intentions. This approach describes the specific situation rather than generalizing, expresses your feelings rather than attacking their character, explains the impact on you rather than assuming their motives, and states your needs or values rather than demanding specific actions. Research confirms the effectiveness of this approach. Studies show that statements acknowledging both perspectives, using I language, "I understand you might see it differently, and I feel this way," are rated as the most effective way to open a difficult discussion. These blended perspective statements tend to prevent the immediate spiral of hostility that often derails challenging conversations. Specificity also plays a crucial role in non-defensive communication. Vague complaints, "you're always inconsiderate," are both harder to address and more likely to provoke defensiveness than specific examples. When the deadline was moved up yesterday without checking with the team first, I felt concerned about our ability to deliver quality work. This specific, experience-focused language doesn't guarantee agreement, but it dramatically increases the likelihood that your concerns will be heard rather than reflexively rejected. It creates space for the other person to understand your perspective without feeling they must defend their character against attack. managing the emotional climate. Even with perfect language and setting, difficult conversations can quickly derail when emotions intensify beyond a certain threshold. When either party becomes emotionally flooded, overwhelmed by anger, hurt, or fear, the brain's capacity for rational thought and empathetic understanding diminishes dramatically. Maintaining emotional equilibrium, both your own and, to the extent possible, the other person's, is therefore crucial to productive, difficult conversations. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or maintaining artificial detachment. Rather, it means managing emotions so they inform the conversation without overwhelming it. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional management. Learning to recognize your own emotional triggers and the physical sensations that signal escalating emotions allows you to intervene before reaching the point of flooding. Common physical cues include increased heart rate or breathing, tension in the chest, jaw, or shoulders, rising heat in the face or neck, or a sensation of not thinking clearly. When you notice these signals, taking a brief pause can prevent emotional escalation. This might be as simple as a few deep breaths, or as explicit as saying, "I notice I'm feeling pretty strongly about this. Let me take a moment to collect my thoughts so I can express myself clearly." This pause isn't avoidance, it's strategic self-regulation that allows you to continue the conversation from a more centered place. Research shows that even brief pauses that allow heart rate to return to baseline can significantly improve cognitive function and communication effectiveness during difficult discussions. When the other person becomes emotionally activated, responding with empathy rather than matching their intensity helps de-escalate the situation. Acknowledging their feelings without necessarily agreeing with their perspective creates space for emotions to be expressed without overwhelming the conversation. I can see this is really upsetting for you. I want to understand your perspective better. This empathetic response serves two purposes. It helps the other person feel heard, which often reduces emotional intensity, and it prevents the conversation from escalating into a cycle of mutual reactivity, where both parties become increasingly emotional and less rational. The goal isn't to eliminate emotions from difficult conversations. Emotions contain valuable information and energy. Rather, the aim is to maintain an emotional climate where both parties can access their full cognitive and empathetic capacities, rather than being driven primarily by defensive reactions. The collaborative framework, perhaps the most transformative shift in difficult conversations, comes from changing how you conceptualize the interaction itself. Most people unconsciously approach challenging discussions as adversarial, me versus you, where one person must win and the other lose. This framing virtually guarantees a defensive, competitive exchange. A collaborative framework fundamentally reorients the conversation around us versus the problem. This isn't merely semantic, it creates a genuine psychological shift where both parties see themselves as allies working together against a shared challenge rather than opponents working against each other. This reframing can be made explicit. I'd like us to figure out together how we can address this situation in a way that works for both of us. This statement positions you and the other person on the same side, facing the problem together rather than facing off against each other. Collaborative problem solving involves several key elements, focusing on interests rather than positions. Positions are the specific solutions or demands each person brings. I need you to do X. Interests are the underlying needs, concerns, or values that motivate those positions. I'm concerned about meeting our quality standards. By exploring interests rather than fixating on positions, you often discover multiple solutions that can satisfy both parties' core needs. Asking open-ended questions that invite the other person's perspective and ideas. What do you think might help address this situation? Or, what would an ideal solution look like from your perspective? These questions demonstrate that you value their input and see them as a partner in resolution rather than an opponent to be convinced or defeated. Being willing to acknowledge where you might have contributed to the problem or where you could adjust your approach. This vulnerability often inspires reciprocal openness rather than entrenched defensiveness. Exploring multiple options before deciding on a solution. This brainstorming approach prevents premature commitment to a single answer and often reveals creative possibilities that neither person initially considered. The collaborative framework doesn't guarantee agreement on every issue, but it dramatically increases the likelihood of finding mutually acceptable solutions. Even when perfect resolution isn't possible, this approach tends to preserve the relationship and create greater understanding, which are often more important in the long run than winning on a specific issue. The resolution cycle difficult. Conversations that end without clear resolution or next steps often leave both parties feeling unsatisfied and uncertain, regardless of how well the discussion itself went. Completing what might be called the resolution cycle creates closure and forward momentum that transforms a challenging conversation into tangible progress. This cycle includes several key elements: summarizing shared understanding, articulating what both parties now understand about each other's perspectives, concerns, and needs. This ensures you're actually on the same page rather than just assuming agreement. So from our discussion, I understand that you're concerned about X, while my main concern has been Y. Is that accurate? Identifying specific agreements or solutions that address the core issues raised. These should be as concrete as possible to prevent later misunderstandings. Going forward, we'll check in weekly about project timelines rather than waiting until deadlines approach. Acknowledging areas where perfect resolution wasn't possible, but understanding was increased. While we have different views on the best approach here, I better understand your perspective now, and I appreciate you listening to mine. Expressing appreciation for the other person's willingness to engage in a difficult conversation, regardless of the specific outcome. Thank you for being willing to have this discussion. I know it wasn't easy, but I value that we could talk about it directly. Planning for follow-up if appropriate, setting a time to check in on how the agreed solutions are working, or to continue the discussion if more time is needed. This resolution cycle prevents the common problem of difficult conversations that feel productive in the moment but lead to little actual change or clarity. It transforms discussion into action and understanding into agreements, creating tangible value from the challenging interaction. The cycle also provides psychological closure that allows both parties to move forward without lingering tension or uncertainty. Even when perfect resolution isn't possible, having clarity about where things stand reduces the emotional burden of ambiguity, the thread that ties it all together. Here's the paradox nobody prepared you for. You now have an impressive toolkit. You understand how to project confidence, make powerful first impressions, use body language effectively, listen actively, connect empathically, tell captivating stories, use humor strategically, and navigate difficult conversations with grace. But here's what separates people who merely perform these skills from those who truly magnetize others. There's one invisible thread that must weave through everything you do. Without it, all these techniques create connections that feel engineered rather than genuine. With it, even imperfect communication creates bonds of unusual depth and meaning. That thread is authenticity. Think about it. You've probably met someone who did everything right, conversationally, asked questions, maintained eye contact, responded appropriately, yet something felt off. The interaction, while pleasant enough, left you feeling unmoved. Then, there are those rare individuals whose presence feels electric and real. They might occasionally stumble over words or break a conventional rule, yet you leave conversations with them feeling energized and genuinely connected. The difference isn't in the techniques, it's in the spirit animating those techniques, the authentic self behind the words and gestures. True authenticity isn't about unfiltered self-expression or rejecting growth and learning. It's about ensuring that the skills you develop become genuine extensions of who you are rather than masks you wear to impress others. Think of it like learning to dance. A beginner focuses consciously on each step, counting beats, positioning their feet with deliberate attention. Their movements, while technically correct, may appear stiff and mechanical. The master dancer, however, has internalized these same techniques so completely that they flow naturally, becoming authentic expressions of the dancer's unique style and emotional interpretation of the music. The same progression occurs in conversation. The skills you've been learning may initially feel like conscious techniques you're applying, but with practice and integration, they transform into authentic expressions of your best self, not a performance, but a more skilled version of your natural communication style. This is where everything comes together. Your growing confidence isn't fake. It's developed through genuine practice and real experiences. Your ability to listen actively isn't a trick. It's become a natural expression of your genuine curiosity about others. Your storytelling isn't performative. It's how you authentically share experiences that matter to you. When your skills become this integrated, something remarkable happens. People stop experiencing you as someone who's good at conversation and start experiencing you as someone who's genuine, present, and deeply connecting. The techniques become invisible, leaving only the authentic, human connection they were designed to create. Here's what this means practically. Stop worrying about doing everything perfectly. Start focusing on being genuinely present. Let your natural personality shine through these enhanced skills rather than hiding behind them. Share what genuinely interests you, even if it's not what you think will impress. Acknowledge when you don't know something. Laugh at yourself when appropriate. Be willing to show appropriate vulnerability. The most magnetic conversationalists aren't those who never make mistakes. They're those who handle imperfection with grace and keep engaging despite momentary awkwardness. They've discovered that authenticity, combined with skill, creates something far more powerful than perfect technique ever could. So here's your final challenge. Take everything you've learned and make it yours. Not by rigidly following rules, but by integrating these skills so deeply that they become authentic expressions of who you are. Practice not to perform, but to genuinely connect. Develop not to impress, but to understand and be understood. Because when you combine skill with authenticity, when technique becomes so natural it's no longer technique, you don't just become good at conversation, you become the kind of person people crave talking to. And that's not because you've mastered some formula, it's because you've discovered how to be your most authentic, connected, skilled self. That person, that's who people have been waiting to meet all along.